want to welcome you all to come today. This is the committee. This is the Rotary Disability Advisory Committee. Just to clarify, I like to try to clarify every time we have a meeting, what's the difference between the two of them. The Rotary Disability Advisory Committee is geared, focused on Rotary, where our goal is to try to help make Rotary more disability welcoming and friendly through accessibility and inclusion. And the goal of the club is to work on human rights issues for people with disabilities around the world. So that's the difference between the two of them. I'm glad to announce today that up to this point, I've basically been trying to chair this group, but with a discussion with the two Jeremys, Jeremy Opperman and Jeremey Warriner, they're going to work together as a team to try to manage this group and to head it in the direction they really should be heading to, because of the fact I've been so focused on the club, I haven't been able to give the time to the committee that I really should. So I'm glad to have them both on board to work on it, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes. But first, I want to welcome Megan. Megan back from I think it was the spring of this year. That was when you came to us. At that point, we were fairly new. We now have over 300 people associated with this group from around the world, and 21 different countries, I think it is. So we have a lot of help behind us. They're not all here today. I assume we try to experiment to change the time to 9 o'clock again, which works for some people. And we used to meet at 12. But I don't want to talk too much. Megan, I'm going to turn this over to you to give us an update on what's going on with the Learning Center and answer anybody's questions.
Okay, great. Well, it's
Megan?
nice to yeah, thank you. It's nice to be with you all again. Excuse me. I know it was really great meeting with you before. It was really helpful to hear what everyone was experiencing. And, we have been doing, some work for the Learning Center and in trying to make our courses more accessible. So, and I've been working with Jeremy Opperman along the way. So that's been very helpful. And so just some things that we've been concentrating on is alt text has been a big focus for us. So I think, I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but I have worked with all the staff that develop e-learning courses to kind of train them on using alt text. And then I've also trained our copy editing staff who make our courses look really good, or the text look really good on alt text. And several of us have also downloaded the NVDA screen reader to test the courses ourselves to see how does it work with a screen reader? How do certain interactions work with a screen reader? And our copy editing staff has done the same, and that's been very helpful. So they copy edit the alt text and all of that. And also our translation team also works with the alt text to translate that. So I've worked with them. We also are making sure we're using good color contrast in our courses. And we've also, to help make Rotarians more aware, we've placed an article in our the newsletter that the Learning and Development team puts out called Training Talk, which is primarily for district trainers, but for anybody who wants to subscribe, about making their Rotary training events more accessible. So we had a big article about how they can do that. included a lot of different suggestions. I myself have been attending a lot of webinars on helping to make training more accessible, and that's been really helpful for me. Also, we've been incorporating accessibility tips into some of our courses for members, where it makes sense. There's one that's coming out soon called Creating an Inclusive Club Culture. So that does have some content on making your club more accessible, as well as one called Best Practices for Engaging Your Members. That is like these are both membership courses that are on the Learning Center for anybody to take. Those will both be in the club as part of the club president courses starting next year as well. Now we have checked in with our learning management system vendor. So the learning management system is where we house all of our e-learning courses, and they tell us that they have a plan to make the site completely accessible. It's not completely accessible, it's mostly accessible, but there are some parts that they're still working on. So they've assured us that they have a roadmap for that. I've also been kind of keeping track of our e-learning authoring tool that we use to create our interactive courses. And they're not completely there, but they are working towards making, all of the parts, all the interactions, all of the parts of the courses you work with a screen reader. They do all work. I did some research. They do all work with keyboard just by using a keyboard, but I do realize it's not all parts of these courses are accessible with a screen reader just yet, because I know that there are different keyboard commands depending on the screen reader you're using. So I know that there are the parts that aren't currently accessible with a screen reader, or they're working on to make them accessible with the screen reader. So just keeping track of that. So that's kind of the big updates there.
Can I sort of, Ken, do you mind if I dialogue a little bit with Megan here? So thank you, Megan. I love your enthusiasm and interest in this, and I really appreciate the energy that you put into this with your team. I mean, things like downloading NVDA, etc. I mean, that's terrific, and also engaging the vendors to look into this. That in itself, in fact, is a really important element to this issue. Is dealing with vendors. Is very proactive and shows sustainability down the line if one can get them on side, as opposed to always retrofitting and always fixing to try and fix it at source. So I commend you. I really, really do. Now, I've, as you know, I think I wrote you and Sarah a report on the one training I went through, which was something about
the action plan.
No, the bias one.
That's right. Okay.
Remember, I went through it.
That's right.
So I could read everything, and I love the resource documents at the end. There's a lot of terrific stuff in there. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I learned a lot, and I was chuffed about that. So where I struggled was in the interactive parts of the course.
Okay.
So all the explanations and the text was fine. Where it was impossible was when you had to do something like lift something, drag and drop over. And so you had two columns of things and you had to align them. And I couldn't for the life of me work out how to do that. That's just one example. And so unfortunately, I wasn't able to submit anything. So I was able to read every word, but I wasn't able to submit because I couldn't actually do any of the actual tests that at the end of each module. And then so in a sense, it was an interesting learning, but not unfortunately satisfactory in the sense of that you get to feel that you've done a course. So you wouldn't, I mean, for instance, if somebody submits everything, then you even have a record of who's done it, I assume. But you probably don't have a record of me having done it because I wasn't able to submit. So I think this is it's an important curve here.
Yes, no, and I'm glad that you mentioned, you had told us this. And so I actually, so this is one of the things I looked into with our, the company we use, which is Articulate, to create those interactive e-learning modules. And I looked into that particular kind of interactivity, which is, I believe you were trying to do a matching activity.
Yes,
There's also one where there's like a sorting, and they both involve dragging, dropping things. And when I looked those up to see how, like, they have a lot, their website, thankfully, is they have a lot of information about their progress towards accessibility on those types of activities. And they did say that for anything that's for dragging, dropping, they are working on making that accessible for screen readers. So it's not there yet, but I was glad to see that they are making those, that it's in development right now to make those work with a screen reader. It does currently work with just your keyboard. I use
the keyboard only. All of us do. You know, we don't use the mouse.
Sure. And so from what I understand though, so this is like based on, is it ARIA standards for the, does that sound familiar?
Hanif, we have a guest on the line who actually might know what that is. I've never heard of that. Hanif, do you know what Megan's talking about? ARIA?
Yeah, she's basically referring to standards, HTML5 standards. So ARIA is just one of those components that makes it a bit more easier, and that exposes the content in a more accessible way to assistive technology.
Megan, just to introduce you, Hanif is an old connection of mine. Funny enough, I had nothing to do with him coming on the call tonight. That's entirely Ken. But Hanif is far more of a techie than I am. I'm just one of those guys who wants to use it and move on. But Hanif is actually quite a keen techie. So it's actually quite useful that he's on this call.
Oh, that's great.
So thank you for that. Now, the other thing that I wanted to mention to you was I thought I would try it on the mobile, because what we often discover is that things can be actually differently accessible on the mobile, sometimes more accessible. So I use an iPhone, and so I linked in, and there was quite a serious, almost not a firewall, but a blockage right from the beginning, because it said, have you downloaded, Megan, help me, is it called Go Learn or Learn Go, something like
Go Learn.
Go Learn. Have you downloaded Go Learn? And I said, in all honesty, being a Rotarian, is it the truth? And I said, no. And so it took me, and I thought, oh, what the hell? So I downloaded it, and all hell broke loose, because it is fiendishly inaccessible. And I had to quite literally, I couldn't get out of it. It was a diabolical download, and it wouldn't take me any further. And not only was it inaccessible, but it prevented me from going any further with your course. So I wanted to know, what can you tell me about this Go Learn? It's interesting.
Well, yeah, it is. It's not, I mean, unfortunately, I think, to be in all honesty, it is not the most seamless experience that we had hoped it would be in using this app. We do realize that. So I apologize that it's been such a bother. I think part of it is because it's trying to work with a single sign-on, and it's going through my Rotary and all of that. So I don't know. I'd have to see if there is any way to make it a little bit easier, or if this is kind of how it has to work. I don't work directly with the app.
Can you bypass using it?
You know,
in other words, you don't have to learn Go Learn. Use Go Learn.
I do now. I think you actually do have to use it, but I don't know once you have downloaded it and then go back to. Have you tried going back on it after downloading it?
No,
You
I'm
tried
still
it again?
recovering from that experience. I'm not a
Some
masochist. I'm not going to go back.
PTSD.
PTSD,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh no. Yeah, I would have to look into this more and to be fair, I don't work directly with the app as much as a couple of my other colleagues do. So I'd have to really see on the technical side, like how that could work to be a little easier. So I'll look into that though.
Okay, please.
Yeah, but I'm sorry
Please.
wasn't a good experience.
No, it really wasn't. So I'm not likely to try that again. But thank you. Thank you. So the main reason for me chipping in on this call now was just to commend you for the effort you've put into this, particularly around engaging the vendors. If I can just give you a little tip. So I used to work for one of our provinces. I ran the disability desk for one of our provinces here in the country. And I was able to get into place a, what do they call it? Terms and conditions, if you like. With vendors, so that when they produce something inaccessible, whether it was a building or a website, and it wasn't accessible, then they would need to pay for it to be retrofitted. And it was a great way for them to climb on board real quick. And so norms and standards, that's the word I was looking for. And so what might be useful is if you build into your norms and standards that your vendors in fact play the game and are at least follow the principles, of W3 consortium, or what's the other word for it? Hanif, what else is it called? Web Content 8, WCAG. So,
Yes.
so it's a way of hooking them in, that they need to take accountability for being accessible, and you'd make a huge contribution to the world that way, because it will stick, and so they'll start producing more accessible stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I also want to let you know that, excuse me, I know in the first time when I met with you, you had given me a lot of great feedback on the Rotary website and how that could be more accessible. And I did pass that along to our web team. Okay. And they seemed very, concerned that, and happy to hear that, not happy to hear that wasn't accessible, but at least, that it appeared that they might be moving forward in a direction to make it more accessible, but I don't know the timeline and all of that. So I just wanted to let you know, though, that, your feedback and comments, have been heard. And so I'm hoping that they will, at some point, make the Rotary website a little more accessible.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big job. That's a big job. Everybody I tell the story to about some of the inaccessibility always smile and said, well, you need to be sighted. It's difficult enough to use when you're sighted, because it's a big, very dense site. Right. And so people get lost on it. So, but thank you, Megan. And as long as we can we can keep working together, I'm sure we'll get this thing right. I'm not going anywhere.
Slowly but surely, right? we'll get there.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you, Megan, very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Megan?
Megan, I'm curious to know how much usage is the Learning Center getting?
That's a great question.
In general, or?
Well, yeah, in general, and I guess in regards to the accessibility aspect of it that you've put on there and whatnot.
Well, what I think, Jeremy, if I can just step in there, what I think you might be asking between the lines is, what I'd like is how much use is the Learning Center getting from a diversity point of view? So, yes. For instance, are you getting? Can you track how many people are going through that course, the various diversity related courses?
Well, we can definitely track who's taking which course, who's enrolled, who is actually completed, all of that information. We do. Is that more of what you're asking, or is? Okay.
I know I'm jumping into Jeremy here, but I'm thinking that's what he might have meant. Jeremy,
Well,
am I
yeah,
right?
that's what I'm kind of looking for is, I mean, and it's wonderful that the information is there. How much is the information actually getting out? How is it getting utilized, I guess?
So are you referring to in instances where we are putting tips for like how clubs can be more accessible to members and things like in our courses?
Yeah, so are you able to track how much clubs are utilizing that or if it's there, but
Oh,
they're not actually accessing it and doing anything with it? That's what
Can,
I'm looking for.
can I say something?
mhm.
Hi, everybody.
I do, yeah.
Your sitting, your sitting district governor has an opportunity to contact the learning center, and every Monday morning they will send him or her a report of who did what course in the past week and actually since the beginning of the learning center. So you do have an option to, well, to have a committee. Some districts have committees that are really committed to popularize and to advertise and to kind of help their members to go through the learning center. So that's an option for the different districts. I know that one of our districts in our group of 8 here in New England, the district 7980, they were a champion last year because their district governor at the time, that was one of his missions, to have as many people take as many courses as possible. So yes, you do have an option to see the reports, or at least the sitting district governor has that option.
That's right. Thank you, Diana. That's a great point. So that can be helpful to see, but if you're looking for a little bit like beyond that, it might be a little too early to know, you know, if members are, if the information we're putting about that kind of thing in our courses is actually being used, you know, that's kind of a little beyond what we measure in our courses. Now we are starting to, we're starting, you know, when we evaluate our courses, it's more of at the end of the course, how did you like it? What would you improve about it? But we are starting to, with some of our courses, take a deeper dive into, did you actually use what you learned in the training? You know, like kind of, we call them like it's Kirkpatrick, different levels of evaluation, and, you know, to get beyond a level 2 where, you know, if to know if you actually learned something, but did you actually use what you learned? And that would be interesting to see, you know, to maybe measure in some of the courses that have that kind of content, to see if that, you know, if we ask questions like, did you use, are your clubs now more accessible because, you know, of what you learned in this course, things like that. You know, that's definitely something we can look into, or you can try and do that, you know, in your club or in the district somehow. Yeah, so that's just a little bit harder to measure.
And I think you took that deeper than I was even
sorry.
thinking, which is wonderful,
Okay.
actually, because you took it to a place where it needed to go. But yeah, I mean, I was really asking more just, are you able to tell that people are accessing the information and utilizing the resources that you've put there, whether or not they're taking that from going through the Learning Center lessons to actually putting it into practice, which, yes, that is something that is a hard thing to measure, but something that would be wonderful to be able to start to learn. But yeah, I was really just looking for, are you able to tell that it's being used? So.
Right, we can definitely tell whether, you know, for each course, you know, how many people have enrolled and then who have actually completed and who clicked on which materials. Yes, we do have reports like that that we can run.
So
And it sounds like it's being well utilized so far.
Well, I have not run any reports on that. So to be honest, so I don't know. And, you know, and the courses that we have put more of that kind of content in, only one of those courses is even out yet. So the other one is coming out.
Okay.
So, and then we do have other courses on just DEI in general, but they don't have the actual accessibility component that these other two courses I mentioned have. So, but that's something, you know, we can look out for is, you know, who's really taking this, how many people, you know, who's completing it, how much of that material is being downloaded or looked at, for sure.
I think, Megan, what would be good, you recall one time you and I actually we spent an hour or more on Zoom while I was on the net so that you could actually see what I was doing. I think what would be useful is if and I've just discovered another visually impaired Rotarian. I've been looking around. Jesus, I tell you what, it's like finding rocking horse dung, seriously. But I found another visually impaired Rotarian in Australia, which might be tricky time-wise, but I think you and I should spend another hour or so, and we'll go through a course so that you can really see what's going on. Would you like to do that?
Definitely,
Okay.
yeah, that would be very helpful.
Well, I'll communicate with you, and we'll book some time.
Okay, great.
Okay. Ken?
Any more questions? Any more questions?
Jeremy, there is a gentleman with complete vision loss who's a Rotarian with Chicago One Club.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Like I say, we don't know about them always. That's great. Where is he, Mark?
Chicago.
Excellent.
The original, the first Rotary Club. I met him last year.
Okay.
Okay.
I take it he wasn't around at the inauguration of the first club.
He's a bit
He'd be
younger
rather
than me.
old by now. I'm not surprised he's blind.
Megan, I actually have a question for you. When you make changes to online learning centers, if you got new modules or you improve the system, do you have representation from the disability community to beta test any of the changes that you've made?
Well, you know, we are trying to do that now with our courses, more so with our courses. So, but that is a really good point you bring up. If there are changes to, so, you know, the learning center, which is run by our vendor called Docebo, they would actually be helpful, you know, if they come out with a new feature, you know, for, you know, maybe we could have people test that for accessibility. I know we seem so focused on our courses, but the rest of the learning center, it definitely would be helpful to have that tested, especially if it's a new feature. So
yeah,
that's a good point, Mark.
I think representation will be very important in that aspect. What we can sometimes be clouded by when we look at a course and we look at who is taking that course, and we recognize there's very few people with disabilities who shouldn't be taking this course. If we can check that data, not realizing the reason that people with disabilities are not taking that course is they can't. So it's important for people who have low vision, people like myself who are deaf, to be able to beta test and say, hey, hang on a second, there's something we haven't thought about here.
Right. Yes, no, that's very true. And I have started, so I think with I have a course I'm am close to putting out for testing that I'm developing for club presidents for next year, that I have developed a list of questions for for testers to use for accessibility. So, you know, for every course that we develop, we do send out for Rotarians to test. And, you know, but it's mainly questions about like how does the course flow? Does it seem relevant to, you know, this role? Is there anything you'd improve about it? Things like that. But I have developed a list of questions now for it to be tested more for accessibility. And I believe I sent those to you. Did you get those, Jeremy?
I did. Thank you, Megan. I thought I responded to them. Did I not? To you?
You know, I don't
Whatever,
remember
didn't-
getting anything, but that I could look back. Maybe I missed it.
Okay.
But
Yeah, it was quite broad. You know, it was quite broad. I remember reading them.
Okay.
And yeah, so but we can talk about that.
Okay.
And Mark's question is very valid.
Yes.
And what I find is every time we want to, in fact, get somebody. I mean, there's somebody online right now who's a guest, and he's not a Rotarian as far as I know, who would be an exceptionally useful person to audit a course. But not being a Rotarian means he can't get on.
No, that's not true. He can, if you have a My Rotary account, anybody can create a My Rotary account.
Oh, anybody, not just Rotarians, you mean?
That's right. Not just Rotarians.
Oh, I didn't understand that. I was under the impression that if you didn't have your, you know, if you weren't a registered Rotarian, you couldn't get on. So anybody can get on?
Yes, you just have to create a My Rotary account first.
Okay.
I was just about to ask for application forms.
Well, as long as it's accessible. No, but I mean, Megan, that's a game changer. That's a complete game changer, because that means we could. I know of several people who would be very, very useful, and we could save a lot of time in terms of what Mark's just said around beta testing.
Okay.
So can we pick this up? I mean, that's a very important thing you just do, because I remember some while ago we brought the issue up, and one of our young friends on this call wasn't able to do something because he was a Rotary actor and he didn't have access to whatever he needed to get onto. So I didn't realize that actually anybody can have a My Rotary account. Okay, that's different.
Right. And just so you know, so members see the full suite of courses that we offer. We have, if you're a non-member, there's a non-member side of the site, and you have access to, you know, other courses. Not just a smaller portion of the courses. However, if you're testing a course, you'll see that course on there. So it's
because you'll make it available.
We'll make it available for you. But just so you know, there is a difference between what members see and what non-members see.
Well, that's a complete game changer. So I'd like to talk to you about that, because I'm pretty sure maybe Hanif might be interested, and I'd value his opinion. And I know a visually impaired person who is more reflective, in fact, more demographically reflective than Hanif and I. Hanif and I are in the minority because we're pretty blind. Hanif, I forget, are you a total or are you a partial?
I'm totally blind. Yeah.
You're total, right. So the two of us are in the minority in the world. The people who I'm very concerned about, who are the majority, 75% of the visually impaired people in the world are partially sighted, visually impaired. And they would represent many of the older people, because they get things like late onset retinal diseases such as age-related macular, etc. And that's far more reflective of possible Rotary membership down the line. And so it's very important that we look at this. So I'm very excited what you've just said.
Okay, great.
And I just want to add something. Some of you might remember that there is a club in one of the districts in upper state New York that most members are they have hearing impairment, so they might be a good kind of group when you get together to go through the learning center. And Jeremy, I can put you in touch with them.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
I forget now. Yeah. What's her name? Bedford, Rutherford, something like that.
Rochester.
Yeah.
This is district, I just checked, district 7120. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Good.
Great, thank you. I appreciate, Megan, what you're doing and the efforts you're making and the interest that you've taken in all this. It's very well, we're very appreciative of what you're doing. So, she's always been open when I've written to her about things. So we appreciate that too, the fact that you're always listening to what we have to say. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. It's been great partnering with you.
I want to recognize Anne. Welcome to the group, Anne.
Thank you so much.
Anne, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, thank you, Ken. My name is Anne, and I'm from Kenya. Yes, I'm the first lady because my husband happens to be the governor of our county, and I was referred here by a friend, and I'm really excited and getting to know. I really want to know what it is about advocacy. I'm a champion for people with disability in my county, and I haven't been able to reach out to them because we have so many cases of disability, and our people are not able, parents, disability and poverty, I'm sorry to say that they are linked up together, where you find a family with a disabled child is equally not economically empowered. So those are the challenges that I've been going through. And I hope that by becoming a member of the Rotary, I'll be able to reach out to them and also get that fulfillment of becoming a change to somebody's life. So I'm really excited to be here, and I want to really learn a lot that is done by the Rotary. So thank you so much.
Great, thank you, Anne. We're very honored to have you join our group for the great work that you've done and for your connection with in Kenya. And that you want to become a Rotarian is exciting. We're certainly going to. I'm going to be talking with Anne and sending her an application and have her join the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy. So very, very honored to have you on board with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
I just have a quick question to Anne. Thank you, Anne. Thank you for your interest and all you do. I just have a quick question. What is the county that you and your husband are he's the governor for?
My county is Nyandarua.
Okay.
In Kenya.
Okay.
Yes, Kenya.
Yeah. Thank you.
We have counties 47. So one of the 47 counties is Nyandarua.
Okay.
This.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. Thanks. Welcome.
Okay. Thank
Anne,
you.
who was with us today, and she's actually from Kenya and is dropped off probably because of network problems also. The fact that she works with Clubfoot, and Ralph and her have been working on getting her involved in this action group with a Clubfoot action group. And we actually had her join that Clubfoot action group in Rotary, and that group wants to talk to us. So Ralph, myself, and Anne will have a conversation with them, which I think is outstanding. So we can help bring awareness of Clubfoot to Rotary through that action group. Another activity that has happened is Rotary Magazine is doing an article about our club. the Rotary Club of World Disability Advocacy. The article is going to come out in February, and they're doing a story about clubs, about inclusion, clubs with they're involved in inclusion. And so obviously we're one of them. So they had contacted me, and then we've done, they did an interview with me, and they unfortunately want to have a photo, which I don't like at all. But and so that will be coming out in the February magazine, a Rotary magazine. The Learning and Resource Center of the DEI, which I think Jeremy can explain a lot more to us what that is, but they have been wanting to get in touch with us and find out what we can do to work together on projects together. So myself and Jeremy, who's a member of that group, and Jeremey Warriner, and also Grace from Kenya, will be going to a meeting on December 16th to see where we can collaborate together and work on projects together, which is great news. We're also working on a podcast, which is now getting closer to possibility. That was one of our missions, is awareness. And the two Jeremeys are going to work on that together. It's a Jeremy and Jeremy show. And so that will be bringing awareness, not only to Rotary, but to other people on different subjects about disabilities. And another project that's being worked on right now from committee people here is to work on an advocacy webinar, and also workshops afterwards. What our goal is to start to encourage people to be advocates, not only in the community, but also in Rotary. We would like to encourage people to be advocates in Rotary. So that's part of our mission. We have right now, we're working with advocates from the United States and Brazil, India, and Kenya, and Nigeria, and all of them are going to work together to work on this series. Anybody who's interested in being involved in that will be welcome. Once again, that's part of the awareness mission of this committee. And what I want to finally final word is, I'm going to turn over to you, Jeremy Opperman, because Jeremy, as I said, and the two Jeremeys have been willing to help on working on the management of this committee and make sure that we're heading in the right direction and doing what our mission is to do. And I know, Jeremy, you had some thoughts that you wanted to talk about one of the things that for this committee that you'd like to see it do is to try to encourage more people with disabilities to be encourage the people with disabilities to be members of Rotary, but also to encourage Rotary to bring in more people with disabilities. I don't know if I'd like to turn it over to you for a few minutes, the last few minutes, to talk about what you think the mission of this group should be.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's two things. On the one hand, there's what we think this group should be, and the other, it's the philosophy really behind inclusion. I think what we have already is this phenomenal new club called World Disability Advocacy Group, which is amazing. And I think that has a lot of legs. It has a lot of scope to be able to do some terrific work around the world. That's not to be confused with the principle of inclusion, which is that we should be seeing more people with disabilities in conventional Rotary clubs. I mean, I mentioned earlier how difficult it was to find visually impaired Rotarians. Mark pointed out he's met somebody recently who's an unsighted or a blind person in Chicago. That's great. I might even reach out to them if I can find them. And I've just discovered one I know a lady in England, and I know of a woman in Australia. Now, that's out of 1.2 million people. You'd imagine that if you can, yeah, I can give you the broad statistics. 2% of the world's population are made up of visually impaired people. So just using that stat alone, we should be seeing more people with visual impairments. But I certainly don't want to make this about visual impairment. I'm just giving an example. So what we're saying is that, or what I think what we should be aspiring to on the principle of inclusion is that we need to see more people with disabilities in Rotary clubs. Now, several things happen around this. Is that many people with disabilities are closer to the poverty line around the world. In other words, many people with disabilities don't work for whatever reasons, and that reason isn't only because they can't work. Many people with disabilities can work perfectly well, but don't because they can't find work, for instance. So what you'll find is, from an affordability point of view, there's already going to be a barrier there, possibly. Having said that, that's not necessarily the case throughout the world in every possible case. Very often people with disabilities don't feel necessarily like they're going to belong. Or clubs feel that they focus a lot on disability, but very much from a victim point of view, very much from looking at disability as the recipients of the energy and the resources of Rotary, as opposed to embracing persons with disabilities as normal people in the community. And I believe, and I'm not alone, that, and this is the whole principle of global inclusion thinking, is that we need to see more persons with disabilities in everyday society, including Rotary society. And so I do believe that that should be a goal that we should. And I think, I can think of people in my own country, I can think of hundreds of very capable, very competent people with disabilities who should be Rotarians, frankly, or who would make great Rotarians. And so I think if we're going to, as a committee, to assist Rotary to be more inclusive, it isn't only to look at how we can help Rotary about what they need, what needs to be done for persons with disabilities in various countries, but also to include them as part of the family. So it's quite an interesting balancing game there. So that's one of the thoughts that we had in a recent conversation. So this committee needs to be quite energetic about understanding the nuances of disability, to be able to guide Rotary particularly, and possibly even beyond Rotary, about disability inclusion. And that's the principle, including awareness, advocacy particularly, and that's why we're looking at the podcast. Interviewing, we don't necessarily want to look at only inspiration. Inspiration, when it comes to disability, has a very negative connotation, because what it does is it creates something of a barrier. When you're terribly inspired about a disabled sports person, para sports person, very often it sends a message to you, there go I, but for the grace of God, or wow, they're amazing. But that's not an inclusive model necessarily. It's a wonderful story, but it doesn't actually work that hard towards inclusion. And we must be very careful to not go down a route of only highlighting wonderful inspirational stories, because that's not how the world works. And so I think, as this committee, I think we need to start, it's a year old, or nearly a year now. I think we need to refine it so that our energy is going to be, it can be harnessed towards the best for Rotary in general. And that's my story.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jeremy. We really appreciate it. I'm really excited about the fact that the two Jeremys are going to be working on this. And getting back to our mission, getting back to the marketing campaign where we were working on all that kind of stuff, which unfortunately, because of the time the club has taken from me, has gotten us away from that. So I'm very thankful to have the two of you on board to get this thing back in the direction of it should be going. All that said, if no one else has any other comments, the next meeting of this committee will be on January 3rd next year. So I appreciate you all showing up. This has been recorded. We're going to share it with those who couldn't get in, and we'll be in touch with you all. All right,
thank you very much, Ken.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you all.
holidays,
everybody.
all. Happy
Have a good
holidays,
day.
and
Thank you.
see you in a year. Bye.
Yes,
Merry
happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Thank you.